Well, welcome everybody to the first episode of the newly named Unmask the CEO Files. We have a treat today. We have my new friend Pádraig Ó Céidigh. If you saw it spelled, you'd never be able to go O'Céidigh. But here's where I'm wearing green in the honor of Ireland, where our friend Pádraig is from. And we had a few conversations about rugby and all that kind of stuff. So I'm wearing green in your honor, sir. So I'm excited to have you on this podcast, Pádraig.
Oh, Alan, it's a huge privilege to be here. And thank you so much. Thank you. And yes, we did have some conversations, and you told me about your story when you came to Ireland a few years ago playing rugby.
I did.
And yeah, so you're way overdue a return trip.
I have to, and I want to come with my wife. I want to share some of the beauty and
Absolutely.
lovely part of your country. So let me just read a little short bio because you've done a lot of things, and I want to dive right into your book. So you've had multiple careers. You've been a teacher, an accountant, a lawyer, and an entrepreneur. You bought an airline that was a failing airline at the time, and you turned it into a thriving regional carrier with revenues in excess of 150 million euro. You've founded several businesses in the range sectors called property, publishing, printing, and healthcare. You're a former winner of the Ireland EY Entrepreneur of the Year, and you represented Ireland at the World Entrepreneur of the Year event. Well done. He's also found time to serve on various state and non-state boards and was a senator in the Irish Parliament from 2016 to 2020. Just at COVID, you ended just at the right time. Well done.
Yeah.
Alumnus of the University of Galway and Harvard, adjunct professor of entrepreneurship and business at the University of Galway, and he lives in the west of Ireland with his wife, Caitlin. I'm so pleased to have you here. We're going to talk about your book called The Purposeful Decision Maker. That's the first book. There's many in this, man. I can tell you that after talking to him. So let's start out, Pádraig, and let's talk about how did you come to write this book? What's the story on that?
Well, Alan, the story on that is that at the early stages of COVID, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who I used to mentor. And actually, there's a connection with rugby here
Oh,
because he was the top 6 inches of the psychology coach for the Irish rugby team and in the McNulty. And he phones me up and he says, "Hey, Pádraig, what's your COVID project?" I said, "How do you mean in that?" Well, he said, "What are you going to do during COVID?" I said, "What do you think? Not get the flipping thing if I can avoid it." And he says, "No, no, 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 no. You got to write that book. I'm telling you to write a book." I said, I don't know how to write a book. And anyway, he suggested a writing coach, which I got. And I was going to, Alan, I was going to write about leadership. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about. And I believe there's leadership qualities in all of us. And sometimes we don't let it come out as much as maybe we could or should. And after a few meetings and conversations with this coach, he said, "No, you're not going to write about leadership." I said, "Why not?" Well, he said two reasons. One is leadership books are wall to wall
yeah,
in every bookshop you go
yeah.
into, any part of the world. And he says the second reason is when you spoke to me, you were talking about something much deeper than leadership. I said, "Really?" Well, he says, "Remember, I asked him, I said, and I'm asking you, Alan, and everybody who's listening and watching, give me one word that's the single most important word in your business. Not an elevator pitch, just one word. And the single most important word in aviation is safety.
Yeah.
If you don't have a safe airline, you certainly won't have passengers, you won't have crew or staff, you won't even have an airline. So you've no money, you've no nothing. And the single most important thing about safety is decision making.
Mm.
So we had about 900 flights a week, and I owned the airline for 26 years, and we did not have one accident in 26 years, not one.
Wow.
And the reason for that was actually what I was doing was creating the environment in which my team could make the best decisions they could, given the knowledge and information they had. So I was there trying to get the best team who are in a position to make the best decisions and giving them the best support and resources to make those decisions. So the book is about decision making.
So tell me about, let's stay on the airlines for a moment. So after 26 years, when you think about risk reduction and safety optimization, what were the things that you imparted on people so that those decisions could be made, literally on the fly? So you,
Yeah,
not
pardon the
bad.
pun. That was not rehearsed.
No, that was not rehearsed.
No, the most important thing was to get the right people with the right attitude, and
Okay.
for me to believe in them so that they became team players. The vision, first of all, was my vision. But you know what, Alan? Pretty quickly, I kind of stepped back and became their vision because they had to buy into it.
Yeah.
So they owned the vision. I didn't own the vision.
Hmm.
I started off bought into it, but then it was their vision. So my role was actually to support them in their growth, in their leadership growth, style, strategies, and learning, and so on. So that's basically what I did. And then I needed to facilitate them to go on courses, workshops, and to actually trust them and get them to come back and say, you know what, I made a decision here to go around. For example, if the weather is bad, the airplane has difficulty in landing, it doesn't go around. I made a decision to go do it, and this is why I did it. And we discussed that, and the pilots talk about that and say, well, what do you think? Was that the right way to go?
Hmm.
So, and actually, what they're developing there is the strength of their gut feeling, their strength of their instinct in relation to making a decision based on the practical knowledge that they've received and based on the trust they have in each other and I had in them. So
Hmm.
it's a combination of those factors. And did we get things wrong? Sure, we did, Alan. Did I make mistakes? Yeah, I did, big time. But that's life.
Hmm.
That is life. We will continue to make mistakes, but we narrow down the strength and severity and depth of the mistakes we make, we'll be pretty okay. Like for example, if you and I flew from Shannon Airport in Ireland to Toronto, and if we were a half of 1 degree out, we'd end up in Alaska.
Wow. Wow.
But if you correct that 1 degree when you're 50 or 100 miles out, you just do a small tweak and you're saying, hey,
Yeah.
I'm on the right track to Toronto, rather than leaving it too late. So there was a no blame culture whatsoever.
No blame.
People
Love
were
that.
encouraged to say, look, there's a problem here. I don't know what the solution is. Let's see, can we work it out? And to identify those problems as early as you possibly can. And that saves you a huge amount of money. It gives huge belief in your staff, huge buy-in, and it becomes their vision because they're part of it.
Let's talk about this for a moment because you're moving decision making to where it belongs, which is really awesome. The question always for a lot of CEOs is, well, it might cost us money to make that decision. It could be time, money, overnighting, or whatever. How did you balance the realities of keeping it lean? Because you're a regional airline, so you got to keep it lean, versus the decision making literally on at the street level. How did you balance that out? What decision parameters did they have to make those decisions?
Yeah. One of the things, the fundamental was there was zero compromise to safety. Absolutely zero. I don't care how much it cost
Good.
whatsoever, but safety of my staff, safety of my passengers, safety on the people on the ground. That's it. There's zero compromise on that.
Love it.
So if it costs more money, big deal. So be it. Let's go with it. I would prefer, and they knew this, I would prefer if the airline went broke rather than having an accident
Yeah.
and somebody seriously injured or killed. So that's a no-go area. Above that, then, people were aware of the financial situation, but they would not compromise that with safety
Yeah.
ever. Now, something that's really important in all of this, Alan, and it is direct, it is indirectly related to it. Everybody got a text message every day and saying three figures. How many passengers and what percentage of our planes were full the previous day? Everybody knew that 60% was a break even. Anything above that, didn't know how much profit we made, but I know we're making money.
Yeah.
And if we're making money, they're making money. They're getting a salary, they've got stability, there's money being invested in their careers and their training and so on and so forth. The second thing is, which is really important, on-time performance. What do we sell in aviation? What do we sell? The only thing we sell is to save you time. And the biggest thing that frustrates passengers is they're waiting at an airport
Yeah.
and nothing happening, and they're saying, when are we going to get out of here? I have a meeting, or my partner or spouse or friend is picking me up at the other end. What will I tell them?
Yeah.
Please let me know.
Yeah.
And that seriously frustrates people. So it is. So we had to make sure that we had world-class on-time performance. So my staff knew that. They knew what my load factor was, and they knew how many passengers we carried. And that's all they needed to know.
Yeah.
So are there two, three, or four just key pieces of information that you can share with your team that are so important to see, is our trajectory going in the right direction? Are we okay? Like, for example, Alan, I owned a newspaper. It was in the Gaelic language. I did not have to wait until my accountant prepared management accounts at the end of the month. I would go to the local newsagent, buy the newspaper for €1 or whatever it was, €2, and all I had to do was count the number of pages we had advertising on. And I knew what the revenue on each page was. I knew what number of pages I need for break even.
Love it.
3 minutes. I knew
Yeah.
when I made money or lost money. I knew how much money I made.
Yeah.
We need to do that in our business. We need to do that in our lives.
I love that. And just to tie some things together, you started out by talking about vision and how important that was in decision making. Well, you brought it down to safety is the filter by which everything was looked at.
Mm,
Ergo, they had the parameters already set,
right.
didn't they? So,
Yeah. It is.
but what I love about it is simple.
Yeah.
Simple, and they said safety is the most important. Here are the three metrics that we need to follow, which lead you to making better decisions. And then we're going to measure the decisions to make sure we're getting better all the time and we're communicating and doing that.
Alan, we had one sentence on the walls. Well, we had two sentences, but one sentence on the wall. You mentioned simplicity. That's absolutely key. Aviation is a very complex industry,
Yeah.
as you know. There are a huge number of variables, many of which are outside of your control,
Mm-hmm.
that can actually veer you in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
It's a high-risk business. The sentence is, just think about it. Make the complex simple and the simple compelling.
Compelling. I love that.
Yeah. Make
That's
the
beautiful.
complex simple
Simple.
and the simple compelling. So in your business or in one's life, I try and do this personally in my own life. I try and simplify my life as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
That's creating the space to enjoy it. And I ask the question, is this complicating some things? Am I just causing issues here that's going to cause more issues down the road? Or can I keep it as simple as I possibly can?
Yeah. So if my business partner is listening to this right now, she's be going, he tries to make everything complex.
I don't know about that.
That's brilliant. So when you think through, we started with safety and vision and decision making at the thing. So is there a framework that you apply to decision making that you teach people? Did you teach it in your courses? Do you teach it at when you're teaching at the university? What is there a framework that you align with?
Yeah, well, first of all, the structure of the book is very much based around decision making in aviation.
Okay.
And decision making in aviation has got to do with factual information. You're making your decisions based on fact. Let's say, for example, um, think of, well, we'll get back to Captain Sully going into the
Yep.
Hudson River in a few minutes.
Yep.
But In an airplane, you've got a captain and you've got a co-pilot.
Yeah.
And the co-pilot, before every flight, reads out a whole list of things that the captain checks, check, 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 check. They could do this in their sleep, but yes, they read it out bit by bit by bit.
Yeah.
So it's down to process,
Mm.
down to process. So what you do is you put in a really effective process. You keep fine-tuning the process to get it better and better and better. And then you follow the process and you've a far greater chance to hit the bullseye or hit the sweet spot in your decision making.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really, really important. There are other factors that come into it as well, and that's risk and risk analysis and risk awareness. That's really important. And the other thing I kind of alluded to there a little bit, it's really helpful to get the opinions of the right people. It's easy to get opinions from people who may have an agenda,
Mm.
different to yours. You may not be aware of it at the time, or may not have all of the knowledge and skills that's required to help you make a decision.
Yeah.
That's really, really, really important. So it was based on primarily aviation, also to a degree based on, I also worked at a law practice as a lawyer, and I was an accountant, and lawyers think in a very particular way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Accountants think in a very different way. My son-in-law is a maxillofacial consultant.
Mm-hmm.
Surgeons think and act in a totally different way. And as you mentioned, when I was a senator in the Irish Parliament for 4 years and a bit, God knows parliamentarians think in a totally different way. We mightn't go there, but they do. So it was kind of using those combinations. As you mentioned, also I was in Harvard back in the day, and I'd accessed the Baker Library and got a lot of research done,
Got
current
it.
research on decision making and the process going through in relation to decision making. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an interwoven, I suppose, fabric of all of those that's there in the book, and it's written to be as simple and as straightforward as possible because, as you know, simplicity is the mantra.
So the one thing that was I marveled at when I looked at the book was you said there are decision-making styles. Is this what you're referring to when it's really a profession, or is there a style amongst accountants that are different than, inside an accounting firm, would there be different styles of decision making, as an example?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Great observation. There are decision-making styles based on the career you end up doing because
Okay.
you're trained or cloned to think in a particular way and act in a particular way and make decisions in a particular way. Like I mentioned, lawyers and accountants
Yep.
and doctors.
Yep.
They're very
Yeah.
different ways of thinking
Yeah.
and decision making, but also from an individual point of view. Individuals, a lot depends on your background and your experience
Mm-hmm.
and various things that happen to you throughout your life in relation to how you're going to make a decision. So you could have two people, like for example, you could have two accountants working in the same office or for the same practice and may make a different decision. Like a big thing is, for example, if somebody's getting tax advice, there are some tax advisors that would give what they call racy tax advice. In other words, say, hey, look, let's go for it. Let's push the envelope out here. And then
Yeah.
other tax advisors say, hold on a second now. I really want to cut twice and measure once here. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be really careful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their individual style within the whole area
Interesting.
of tax, you know. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, the other thing you talked about is there are self-reflection techniques to help people become better at decision making. Is that a framework that you've developed as well? Is that part of the research that you found?
Yeah, that's very, very much part of the research. Probably the fundamental to framework in the process of individual decision making is clarity. In other
Mm.
words, and you know, when we've a whole lot going on in our heads, it's much more difficult to come up with a clear, effective decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you actually just keep it simple and narrow it down and say, okay, what are the decisions that are going to really move the dial for me? I can
Right.
make a whole lot of small decisions, which are fine, but are really not going to move the dial. And I focused on that in the last number of years, quite frankly. what are the one or two big decisions that's going to make a significant difference? The other thing I did, which I actually got this through partly through YPO, there's a YPO from South Africa, the name will come to me. He organized a week-long trip to Pune in India
Hmm.
uh, with a number of monks and so on. And the name of the program was called Life in Focus. And that was really, really good. And the reason that was really good, Alan, first of all, there's a little bit of mindfulness in it.
Hmm.
Secondly, you're away from the ordinary day-to-day living. I think it's so important to go on one or two retreats a year. Just get away yourself for a while. And the third thing is life in focus. What's really important?
Yeah.
And that goes back to what I mentioned in the book there, safe harbor. What's your safe harbor? What's your secure base as a person? And any decision you make should strengthen and support your safe harbor rather
Hmm.
than potentially weaken it.
So I'm just thinking out loud here. So we have the airlines that have very specific processes that they have to
Mhm.
follow, and they can, as you said, they can do it in their sleep. But you're also on the other side trying to teach people to be adaptable and to learn and to improve their decision makings. So how do you bring those two worlds together? Because you use the word, I want them to have a good gut. Gut is based on experiences, right? In a lot of ways. How do you pull together the process people and the gut people and make them come together for the better decisions?
Yeah. So what I try to do in the book is to challenge or maybe help people to create their own process.
Ah,
And that is based around, these are examples that I've had.
got it.
And the second thing on it, Alan, is that I've asked people to reflect on decisions they made.
Mm,
And what did you learn? You can make great decisions,
yeah.
but got a bad result. You could make poor
Mm,
decisions and get a good result.
yeah.
You need to make a call on which decisions, it's actually the decision process we're really keen on, not just the end result.
Got
So
it.
let's say, for example, if somebody was flying an airplane or a surgeon was doing a piece of surgery or an operation, and he and his or she and his team sit down afterwards and reflect and said, could we do it differently? Could we have done it more effectively? What do we learn from this process to improve next time around if or when something like this happens? And as you said, Alan, that strengthens the gut, so it does, and
Got it.
strengthens the experience.
Interesting. So you mentioned Scully before. Let's
Yeah,
talk about that story. What was going on for him that you could help us learn how to apply it in the worst of situations?
yeah. That was amazing. Everybody around the world is familiar with that. And I, in particular, took particular interest in it because of my involvement in aviation.
Mm.
I learned to fly an airplane. Not that I have an interest in airplanes. I don't. I learned to fly an airplane because I wanted to know what the pilots and engineers were talking about, so I could speak their language.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
oh yeah,
That's
Jim, honest
very
to
cool.
goodness, Alan, an airplane is nothing else but a bus with wings on it. That's it. In the story, to bring you from A to B, a bus with wings on it.
I'm
And
sure.
all that stuff about owning an airline is all,
Oh,
I
that's
want to
funny.
say, it's rubbish.
That's funny.
Look, that's the truth. That's the truth. So Captain Sully was trained and had processes for practically everything except for something like this. What he learned to do, when he decided very quickly in his mind, he looked at the options and he says, what can I do to minimize the risk to my staff, to my pilots, my co-pilots, and particularly to my passengers?
Yeah.
And he was able to assess because of his knowledge and awareness. And he was a training captain, so he was also, so he had much deeper knowledge than some captains. He was able to say, if I go in to the Hudson River, I'll probably slide along it. If I can slide along at a particular speed, I can. So he's managed to happen to get it to slow down, slow down, slow down. And he said, it's going to give me 30, 40, 50 minutes where the airplane is going to stay buoyant and hopefully people will come to me and rescue everybody.
Mm.
That, that's basically what he did. So he looked at what are the options to minimize the risk, minimize and to maximize the safety of his passengers. That's so if you've got a really core like that, like for example, your safe harbor, like for a lot of us, for me and for you, our safe harbor is our family, their health, all of that well-being. And then what goes to support that? Well, financially is important. Their physical health is important. The friends that are important. Our holidays are important. Our join together are important. But there are other things that are not that relevant. And sometimes we focus ourselves too much on those things that are not relevant. What Sully did, he narrowed in and he says, what's the objective here?
Yeah.
The safety of the passengers.
Yeah.
What can I do to maximize? He couldn't guarantee, maximize the chances for the safety of those passengers. That's what he did.
And his experience is the one that guided him.
Exactly.
Right. So
Exactly.
back to, you can't teach experience, right? You have to live
Yeah.
experience, right?
Yeah.
So
And but the other thing, Alan, is if you don't have the experience, you need to go to the right people who do have it
yeah.
and be able to listen to them.
Yeah. It goes back to what you said at the beginning, that you have to hire the right people with the right attitude, who have the right desire to learn and to live through the vision of safety in your case, which
Exactly.
ultimately is should be every airline's, but we know that it's not.
Yeah.
Every airline's
Well, it
mantra,
could
right?
be.
It's that's
Yeah,
really interesting.
absolutely.
Let's change gears a little bit. Two last topics. Let's talk about YPO a little bit.
Okay.
So you've done a lot with YPO. Tell me about your experience in YPO and tell me about the leadership course that you founded as well and why you chose to do that.
Okay. Um, I'm involved in YPO for a long number of years, maybe 28 years or more. I'm YPO G now, which is, I don't know, is it YPO Grey or YPO Gold?
Gold.
It's Gold.
Stop it. Stop
Thanks
it.
for correcting me. Thanks for correcting me. So I got huge pleasure and huge learning out of YPO. The forum where you've got 7 or 8 or sometimes 9, but normally around 8 people together around the table. It's your private board of directors. You
Mhm.
can say things there that at times you mightn't say to your partner or spouse or your
Yeah.
business partner or whatever. And the depth of that integrity and the depth of that confidentiality and the depth of that support is like nothing I've ever seen before. And I found it amazingly helpful. And you know what's the most helpful thing about it? It's not actually the help and support and advice you get. It's actually the help and support and advice you give.
Mm, yes.
You get an incredible sense of wow, it's amazing to be a small cog in the wheel that helped turn some things for the better for one of your colleagues.
100%.
So yeah, and my good God, that to me is what life is about.
I love it.
So then in relation to YPO, a number of YPO chapters and so on reached out to me over the years and had an interest in coming to Ireland. And I remember, Alan, if I can share this, back in the day, there was a guy, I forget his name, from YPO in Hawaii, Mike Kelly.
Mike Kelly.
Yes.
How's that?
How's that? Well done.
Mike was on my board when I was chairing Gold. Mike was one of my
Wow.
members on. So there you go, small world.
Small world. And this is about 25 years ago. I got a call from this fella. Hey, I'm Mike Kelly. And in American accent, but I said, you got to be Irish with Mike Kelly there someplace. So he says, look, I want you to help me. We're bringing a group of it's called YPO University, I think, back in the
That's
day,
right. You're
over
right.
to Ireland.
Absolutely.
So I was very friendly with the president of Ireland at the time, Mary McAleese, and I was quite friendly with our prime minister as well. And I got the prime minister to speak to them in Dublin. And then I organized a trip to Belfast. And at that time, it was kind of difficult enough. And I got them to stay in the Europa Hotel. Actually, I stayed there last. Now, the Europa Hotel is in the Guinness Book of Records. It's the most bombed hotel in history. So I got them to
A
stay.
bombed hotel.
Yeah.
What a legacy to have.
So they stayed in the Europa Hotel. And then through the president, Mary McAleese, I managed to go get them to go to a kind of a, not a church, a religious place. And I had there a person from the IRA. He spent about 10, 12 years in prison shooting people. Had people, somebody there from the UVF, from the opposite side,
Yeah.
who had also done something similar, and the UDA. And I got the three of them. It's the first time ever they knew of each other. First time ever they sat together in a room. And I facilitated that.
Wow.
And just with YPO. And you know, at the end of it, it's supposed to last an hour, it lasted over 2 hours. The three guys stood up. I kind of get emotional about this because I was caught in the middle. I was there with them in the middle of it. They stood up and they put their arms around each other like you do in a huddle. And they started crying
Oh, that's so beautiful.
because they just realized for the first time, we're all the same. We're shooting and killing each other's and brothers and sisters and parents and uncles and aunts and friends. And we're just the
100%.
same. That
Yeah.
was probably the most profound time of my life as an Irish person. And that was with YPO. And if you're talking to Mike Kelly, I guarantee you he'll remember it. Particularly the most bombed hotel.
I'll tell you, Padre, you actually refreshed my memory. I think he talked about that university
Yeah,
one time to me. You just refreshed my, it was 10 years ago. And I remember he told me the impact was life changing,
it was.
life changing.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
incredible. Wow.
Exactly. There was another guy who I'm still very friendly with, who was in, he was in, I think, Denver chapter or a chapter of that area from YPO. And his parents were hunted out of Northern Ireland back in the day when he was about 10 or 12 years of age. They had to leave. So
Wow.
they left and they went to the UK and then went to the US. And he got involved in business quite successful. And that was his first time back there since then. So it was quite moving. And we had dinner in Dublin Castle, which was nice. But YPO can give you experiences like that
Yeah.
that you never ever get otherwise. Ever get otherwise. That's the second thing. A recent leadership program, YPO International asked me, Texas asked me would I be interested in setting up a leadership program. I didn't want to do it in Harvard, and I'll tell you why. Because and Harvard is an amazing university, probably the best university in the world, certainly in the top three or four. But in Harvard, when we were studying leadership, you study Steve Jobs, Nelson Mandela, people, which is brilliant. You really enjoy it. When I
Yeah.
go back to Ireland, Steve Jobs' world and Nelson Mandela's world is totally different from the world I live in,
Yeah.
even though I enjoyed it. So I then went around Europe. I interviewed professors, leadership professors. I attended leadership programs without even telling them why I was there. So I wanted to see how good they were, what they were doing, how they could align to what I wanted to achieve, and in my view, what's important to YPO. So I ended up in Lausanne, in Switzerland, with a professor called George Kohlreiser, an amazing man, George from Pittsburgh. George, in his spare time, his pastime, he's a hostage negotiator.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. And George became a really good friend of mine since then. And instead of, if you were there, or you who's watching this podcast were there, the case study would be about you. And you do a psychometric test a couple of weeks before you go, 360-degree, because based on your leadership, so you get colleagues, 8 or 10 or 12 people, and that say, oh, geez, Pádraig is great in motivation, but poor on strategy, or whatever. So you get an objective picture of your strengths and weaknesses as a leader. Then also, what that helps me do, and George and the team over there, we then use the model forum. We have a professional coach in there with them, leadership coach, and we then get people together who say, let's say you're brilliant on strategy and I'm weak on strategy. We could be in the same forum together because there's two ways of learning. There's vertical, which is up and down with George and the team, and there's lateral from each other. In
Yeah.
actual fact, the lateral learning is a lot deeper and more profound and more effective.
Absolutely.
So then what you do is you have to create your own strategy, your own plan in relation to how you're developing your leadership. What's holding you back? But not only that, but you're accountable to the other 7 people there. And we encourage them to go on a Zoom call or Teams call once a month for about 6 months afterwards. Say, how'd you get on? How does it work? Focused on the program. So you are the center of it. It's your case study, and the other 7 people plus the professional coach, leadership coach, is helping you fine tune that. So
Love
that's
it.
what.
I love it. So as we wrap up now, you start to think about where we started. We started with leadership and how you ended up writing a decision-making book that really turned out to be about leadership.
Yeah, exactly.
Just so because but but it was interesting because at the end of the day, there's a lot of ways to talk about leadership. At the end of the day, the decisions that are made are
Yeah,
what impact the team and the customers and the constituents. And if they're made poorly without learning and growing, then you end up with chaos, and that's bad leadership. So
yeah.
it's funny. You had a full circle moment there. That's really amazing.
But you brought me back to it. I didn't realize that. You brought me back to it. That's
It's
class,
awesome.
Alan. Thank
My
you.
friend, last in 30 seconds or less, how's Ireland doing as a country? How's it going? Keep it
It's a great.
brief if you can.
Yeah, I would. Ireland is overall is doing really well. Um, the national budget is about 120 billion a year. It's going really, really well. We do have issues like every other country, like housing and so on and so
Yep,
forth. Big issues in relation to the US and the Donald Trump situation and tariffs. But
yep,
actually, you know what's happening? In my view, I actually believe, unfortunately, I'm not unhappy to say this, that potentially America are shooting themselves in the foot because Ireland and the EU and other countries are
yep,
looking elsewhere for markets very actively and
yep,
very aggressively. So the big win-win situation between a whole lot of different countries. I was in Japan last June, and Japan are mad keen to start working with Ireland and so on, and
mm,
other European countries, as is Canada, for example.
yep,
We spoke
yep,
before about that.
yep. We
So
did.
Ireland is in transition, but in transition in a very good, important way.
That's important. It's a great country, some great people, a lot of lineage between Canada and Ireland. And
Absolutely.
and I love that. And Padraig, I'm so glad finally our lives have come together in a
Yeah.
because of a YPO post. Isn't that weird how that works?
Isn't
Just
that
because of a
strange?
YPO post, we got together, and our job is to always give and to support each other. And you've given a great gift to our audience today. And I really appreciate your time and thank you for your time. I think it's going to be wonderful.
Well, Alan, I just want to say one sentence. Of all of this, I've met a new friend, and I
Here, here.
appreciate it.
Cheers. I can't wait.